that. I always screw this up at least once. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
We see a black screen. Now we can. I'm good.
Okay. I was able to move this last time. There it is. Okay, so basically, first I'll start off with basically WordCamps. Basically, WordCamps in general, for anybody who hasn't been to one in the past, is basically a locally organized conference, very similar to a meetup, but it's basically just a little bit larger. They tend to be anywhere from 1 to 3 day events. They're all volunteer based. Basically, that's basically where the organizer team comes in, which we'll be discussing today. It's all open source, and basically they tend to have one going on just almost every week. Including right now during COVID. Megan, for example, was a part of WordCamp Rochester that happened over the weekend. There's also WP Accessibility Day, which is really cool because it was a 24-hour conference all about accessibility. So even though COVID has sort of changed how WordCamps are being presented, they are still going on. If you're ever interested in finding a WordCamp near you, basically you could check on your dashboard when you log into your WordPress admin, or you can go to central.wordcamp.org, and they tell you to have basically a schedule up here for all upcoming or past WordCamps. And basically, the great thing about these events is the fact that they are backed by WordPress Foundation, so that basically they cap all the ticket prices at $20 per attendee per day. So basically that way you can go to a conference, a WordCamp, and only have to worry about for a 2-day event only paying $40, which is very different than most tech conferences where they can get into the hundreds to thousands of dollars for a 2 to 3 day event. As I mentioned before, basically WordCamp organizers are all volunteer based. They tend to come basically have different roles. The roles tend to change based upon the organizing team or the team leader, really, because you could really take the team very large and break it down to very individual jobs. Or you can basically, for example, the last couple of years, we've been having a team of 4 or 5. So basically, we have multiple people covering multiple jobs. All comes down to the team, and also comes down to people willing to volunteer. Because again, it's a volunteer basis. Next, I'm going to go over sort of different jobs that are out there. But you tend to see organizing in terms of the team roles. There's a lead organizer. In this case will be me for next year's event. This was Megan in the past. Basically, the lead organizer is the person who actually submits the application, because you do have to submit an application to WordPress Central, basically for your event, because basically most WordCamps represent a particular meetup or a particular group. So, and they tend to be based upon the location. That's why you see WordCamp Kent, WordCamp Rochester. But now with COVID, because the fact that we have more online, they've opened it up. So now it's basically regional. So basically that's why next year's event will be WordCamp Northeast Ohio, because basically sort of fits our meetup and sort of where we represent a little bit more. Lead organizers does have a cap, though. Lead organizers are only allowed to be able to be the lead organizer for a particular WordCamp for 2 consecutive years. Then they basically want someone else to take over. They do this because the fact that they want to keep people interested and keep someone there, because we have seen in past, like for example, WordCamp Columbus is a perfect example. Angie was a fantastic lead organizer, but she kept doing it every year, and because she couldn't find someone to take over, and eventually the WordCamp sort of just disappeared because the fact they couldn't find anyone to take over, and that's why they want to keep changing it out, so that way you're not basically always dependent on the same person. So that's why basically every 2 years they swap it out. So this will be my 2nd year. So the year after that will basically be we'll have a new lead organizer. The first job is basically the volunteer Wrangler. Basically, you see Wrangler organizer basically sort of interchangeable when it comes to the descriptions. This person is basically just that. It's basically they're there to recruit and to manage volunteers, because during these events, basically we have volunteers who basically work as MCs or hosts for topics, either online or in person, where they introduce the speaker. You have volunteers who work registration tables, answer questions, and also do video. Basically, always volunteers working on a regular basis all around the camp. What's so funny, Megan?
The videos. We only have videos from the online one. It's just so sad. Getting people to agree to do post-production is the most difficult thing, and we've not been able to do it successfully.
Well, that role comes up
We
later
get people
on.
to agree to it, it's just that they don't actually do it. So if any of you have video editing skills, we could use that for when we're back in person.
But the number of volunteers will based upon, again, sort of like the organizer team, it's based upon how many people that are interested in it, but also based upon space. Now, for online events, you don't have to worry about that. Including this past year's event, we had several volunteers from India that helped out at our event, which was kind of interesting because I sent them T-shirts.
Bangladesh.
Yeah, Bangladesh, sorry. Basically, I actually sent them T-shirts because this is the first time we had international, so that was really fun. But like I said, it's a nice thing.
I see Ahmed everywhere now. I swear, he's in every single event that I go to. he's like volunteering for everything that exists.
That's one of the nice things that I guess this whole COVID thing, online work camps, is the fact that you can help out, volunteer at other camps, not just in your local area. Again, Megan was at Rochester, and then also Accessibility Day. Megan and I also did Santa Clarita out in California. So basically you can volunteer, and also it gives you a bigger group. But if you're actually in person, the group actually numbers might not carry as many volunteers because your venue might have a space or camp basically space requirements, and you only have so many people. On the same sort of route, you have the speaker or speaker wranglers. Speakers basically, every single speaker at a work camp are volunteer based. They basically submit a topic in our call for speakers, which we post on the WordCamp website. And the topics can be anywhere from a 15-minute lightning talk to a 45-minute workshop. Basically, all comes different topics. If you have something you're interested in sharing with WordPress, you can submit a talk. I basically, like I said, Megan, myself, Abby have all spoken at WordCamps in the past. This is really nice. Actually, when you actually get selected, and you go out there. It's very nerve-wracking when you're doing the actual presentation, but it's always sort of nice, sort of thing to put on your honor. But a part of the Wrangler's job is to actually go through the submissions and sort of evaluate and basically sort of figure out what type of talks we're going to have for that particular camp. Because again, it's based upon submissions. Now, if you have 40 slots, you only get 40 submissions. Almost everybody is going to be accepted. But if you have basically more than you have to go through. What we tend to do in our particular work camp, basically this past year, is to do we have the speaker wrangler do a blind review, which basically we take out all the names, so that way you're basically the organizers, the speaker wrangler is just judging it based upon the topic, not it's the speaker. So that way basically we don't have any bias in terms of, now if you go to work camps, you tend to see a lot of the same speakers. They sort of come like family reunions in a lot of ways. So you basically don't want that bias, like, we see, for a particular speaker. So that's basically what the speaker wrangler does. Also on the day of, the speaker wrangler does is sort of oversees the speakers, make sure they have everything they need. They have any questions, they need any help with the audio video stuff, they're there to help.
Adapters. Yeah, you gotta have the adapters. Happens every year.
Not this year, because that was online.
Well, yeah. But some of them have really bad lighting. And I want to ship them some lights or something. I have really bad lighting right now too.
Well, see, there's your speaker gift right there. See?
Yeah.
We'll send lights next year.
Oh yeah. We can't even talk about speaker gifts. That didn't go over well this year.
But that actually sometimes it is a responsibility for the speaker wrangler to pick out a speaker gift, because basically, because speakers are volunteering, they tend to get a gift from the organizing team, giving with them from a bottle to a nice embroidered bag, T-shirts.
And this year we bought them ebooks from Smashing Magazine, which was a great gift. It was just maybe not reimbursed.
So
It's
yeah,
not good.
so
Yeah.
that's the speaker Wrangler role. Next is design. As design organizer, we've been really lucky. We have had Sarah Yoder this past couple of years. Basically, this role is basically just that designs the logo, anything branding related for the WordCamp. This past 2019, she did those stickers down here because basically we did an 80s theme. So she basically came up with a bunch of stickers sort of that. We actually also created our Wapu. For those not familiar, it's a little creature that I guess I'm gonna say squirrel. Ours is a squirrel, black squirrel. Basically, it's the mascot for WordPress. So she created her own custom one. So it was really fun. But yeah, basically, the basic design this year. I'm hoping basically we're going to try to get Sarah some help. If anybody's doing design work or that, because this past year she's been doing all of it on her own. And it's a lot of work because we used to got to do everything from badges to posters, to program slide deck, templates, everything.
T-shirts, yeah. Let me
And
get
stuff.
them.
And then this one I'll leave open to Megan to talk about because this has been her role on the last couple.
I love that the picture is
WordCamps.
$1 bills because that's what it feels like.
But Megan, take it away for
Just
sponsors
like
/
absolutely
fundraising.
begging on the street. Yeah. So the sponsorship I've been involved with for the last couple of years as a sponsor wrangler is something like near and dear to my heart because like the event could not actually happen without the sponsorships because with that hard cap of $20 a day, usually like you're looking at like a $41, $42 per day event. So, and there's lots of really cool tools in the WordPress.org site, because basically like you go to this WordPress.org site, it's where like the actual, it's WordCamp.org, but it's the actual like kent.wordcamp.org. You log in there and there's a lot of budgeting tools within there. So you can like, I've opened some tickets and track, and I don't think they added the features. My suggestion was to make it so you could copy a previous year's budget into like your current year. Because if you're using the same venue, you're likely going to have the same types of costs, just some slight adjustments when you get your contract. But it works very closely with the venue and the contract process with your venue, because you have to like already have your venue established before you apply to host a WordCamp, so that you can say like, here, I already have the space. And then from then on out, the sponsor wrangler essentially works on like, how are we going to be able to afford this place? Because typically it's like a physical location, and those can run really expensive. They can be like, you know, $4,000 for the venue alone for like a 2-day rental, and then, you know, maybe like $1,000 or $2,000 for catering, for example. So your job is really just to make sure that gets paid, to find people. It's a lot of like cold call emails. But then once the ball gets rolling, you're doing a lot of back and forth, making sure you get like the logo from your vetted sponsors, and getting they like have a general agreement that they agree to, that like, you know, yes, I'm gonna give you $1,500 and, you know, this is what I'm getting out of it, basically. So yeah, I could get like super in depth on sponsor stuff. And if anyone is particularly interested in it, it's kind of like the backbone of like making sure the event happens is having the money to make the event happen. So I would be totally down with training or sharing anyone the resources that are available to make that work. So a lot of stuff to pay for.
Sounds like a very low-key job. Not.
Yeah, like if you like numbers and you also like having uncomfortable conversations, this is a job for you. Like, because yeah, you'll always have like one sponsor that will like agree to pay and then like back out. A couple of years ago, we had a particularly large and well-known company, not one of like the hosting companies though, but they were one that sponsored a lot of WordCamps. They like agreed to give us $1,500, and And I kept nagging them to get their agreement in and to, you know, send me information to put them up on the site and to pay their invoice and everything. So I was just kind of like bugging them. And then eventually, like, they said they weren't going to do it anymore. And it was 2 weeks before the event.
Oh, good
And
grief.
so, like, yeah, we had already like tied our hands at that point. And I was able to find, I think I was like tweeting about it because I was that like upset, but I like tweeted about it. And I like direct messaged someone that I like knew that owned their own business and asked them, and they covered it. And
Wow.
became a sponsor, and they even wired the money so we could get it quicker. They wired it like within 2 days or something. It was like, it was like the perfect wrap up to it, because I was really worried we were gonna have to cancel the event and like send notifications to people and like process all the refunds, which we don't do, but WordCamp Central would have to do. So yeah, it's good to have your budget all nailed down like before you get that close to the event. And online's a little different. Like we ran into different budgeting concerns this year. Kind of like how do you actually provide that same type of value to the sponsors? Because they aren't getting the face-to-face with people, and it's like it feels more like a sales pitch to like talk to Bluehost or GoDaddy online. So you probably have to get a little creative with like what their benefits package really is.
And some sponsors basically are what they call global sponsors. I think like GoDaddy and a couple other ones where basically they basically give to all WordCamps because they work with WordPress. So you tend to see those that so they get little different packages. Also, we've had in the past sponsors who actually donated instead of basically the cost of the printing, like for example printing posters or for the price of T-shirts.
In kind sponsorships. Yeah, we had the Wapoo pins that we got were in kind, and the printing was in kind. So that's like that part's like a really easy, when you have something like tangible, it's really easy to sell those. Especially when you say like, you tell me the number and I'll find something in my budget that, you know, closely matches that. There was actually one in-kind sponsorship where I just screenshot our entire budget. I sent it to them and I said, pick your price, like just select what you want to pay for. And I think that also seals the deal with them too, because then they see like, oh, this is like, you know, this is a $10,000 event or $4,000 event or whatever it ends up being. Typically, in-person's around 10,000.
Wow.
So next up, I think clicking. All right. Basically, web design maintenance. This basically one is sort of basically following up on sort of league organizers or people every year these last couple of years.
We pushed some of it on Tim this year.
Basically, it's basically what it basically says. It's basically for the site. Every WordCamp gets their own site. They actually recently redid the URLs to be different, because it used to be the year.location.wordcamp.org. You know, they changed it up a little bit, but basically each camp gets their own site. But in terms of the themes, they have some pre-approved themes. You can't create your own custom one. A lot of cases, basically the changes or how it looks is based upon using custom CSS, using the customizer. Now with Gutenberg blocks, basically you can change up things a little bit more. But basically for the most part, basically this is basically maintaining the website, creating up the design for it, troubleshooting if there's a problem on the particular page. For example, speakers, attendees, ticket sales, all that goes up on the site, different pages. So this is maintaining content and also the design. Like I said, this space, like I said, sort of fallen under the lead organizer, but it'd be great if you could find, have someone who really wants to take it, because these sites, depending on if you look at different WordCamps, they really can be different from one another. I think it all comes down to the organizer running that task.
Important side note with the site, you can only use stuff from the repository. So that's why you might like recognize some of the layouts, because you have to use a theme that's in the repository, and you have to use plugins that are in the repository. And actually you have to request plugins. So it's a little bit locked down, but if you know like a little bit of CSS and general, like, you know, editing menus and that stuff. This is, you know, basically that. So it's not like you're not like building a custom theme from scratch or anything crazy for this.
Then next is communication and publicity. Amanda, mostly Bates, basically has done a great job doing this. But this basically is just that. It's basically reaching out to the audience via social media, emails. Basically, like I said, we do before a call for volunteers, a call for speakers. We're trying to get out, just get people's attention, to get them to sign up if they're interested. Same thing with sponsors, and also just to try to get people interested in the camp, so they sign up for tickets. So like I said, this one is obviously a lot of it's social media, so Facebook, Twitter, email, that way, and then also tend to be running posts. So it also tends to sort of the blogger role, leading up to the event. Next up is video. This is what Megan mentioned earlier. If you're not when it comes to WordPress.tv, basically if you go there, it has videos for all the WordCamps and sort of WordPress related videos. Every WordCamp is sent a camera kit. It's the same camera kit that's sent from WordCamp to WordCamp to WordCamp. So the condition of the cameras and what's inside the kit, everything is based upon the person who had it before you. So it can be sort of hit and miss. We've had a couple years where the cameras always didn't have batteries. Another one where they sort of just died halfway through. So
yeah, there was that one that the battery wouldn't charge or whatever, right? We had to have it plugged in, and then we had to like tape the plug into the camera.
So you really feel bad for the speakers because, like, you know, you record this and you're saying, oh, you're going to be on WordPress.tv, and then the videos don't come through. So a lot of it comes down to basically the day of recording, and also, like Megan said, the biggest part is the post-production, actually preparing all the videos for WordPress.tv, because basically what we do is once the videos are set, we submit it to them, and then they review it and they add it to the site. Now, because next year's event is going to be online again, this might be a little bit different because, like, past year we had a service that we worked with that handled the streaming. They also handled the videos, and we also had a captioning company also. So that's why this particular year's all those videos are up there and ready to go. So basically the video role, and basically in this year, we'll sort of be working with whoever the streaming platform is, working with them, making sure they have everything they need, and just making sure everything gets to WordPress.tv. That's basically what this role is. And I think this is, the last one I have is events. This organizer sort of work is basically focusing on before and after. Basically, before each WordCamp, there is a dinner that's for all the speakers, volunteers, organizers, sponsors. So as a thank you for everybody who's basically volunteering and to for this particular WordCamp. Often it's called speakers dinner, but in most cases it's not just speakers. This basically tends to be, like I said, the day before. This past year for our online event, we actually hosted an online sort of meetup. We sort of all hung out. It's also when you tend to see the speakers get their speaker gifts if it's in person. And so this is a great time. And then normally after either the first day of a WordCamp or after the WordCamp itself, if it's a one-day event, there's the after party. The after party is basically sort of a casual event. Normally we basically get money from the sponsors, a sponsor, or just from the budget in general. And basically it's just that. It's basically a casual sort of event. Afterwards, I think the last time we did in person, we went to a local bar and we had the pierogi lady basically for catering. And basically the biggest thing for this particular organizer is the code of conduct, because the biggest thing is when you're picking out a venue for these parties, you want to make sure that it's accessible for everybody, especially when it comes to the after party, because sometimes people come with their families after the event. So you just want to make sure whatever the event or location you're choosing is proper for everyone. That's why for a few years we were using a bowling alley in Kent for our after party. The biggest thing basically is just making sure everybody has fun, and this is part of it. Like I said, a lot of that work is basically leading up, and then the day after, or race right afterwards. Those are sort of the main roles. You can, like I said, break it down further. Keep trying to use my mouse. That's my problem. Where is it? Got too many tabs as usual. Basically, you also basically break it down even further. Like Megan mentioned before, basically you can have someone who's just doing the budget. Basically someone who's just doing the venue if it's actually in person, and also including also if you want to break it down even further to catering. But basically those are the main roles that we basically tend to be using for our particular WordCamp over these last couple of years. And the biggest thing actually, one thing else I really wanted to share is sort of the timeline that you tend to see with WordCamps. Basically, the first basic step is figure out who your team is. A lot of times when you have a WordCamp, a pre-existing WordCamp, there's a lot of carryover. Like, for example, the last couple of years, we've had at least four organizers have basically been the same, carried over, and then you try to bring in some new people. Because you always want to try to bring in new organizers because, again, you never know what's going to happen. And also, you want the event to keep going. Because, like I said before, WordCamp Columbus used to be basically every single year, and now they haven't had one in several years. So basically, the first part of it is basically, like I said, figure out your team. Like Megan said, is figure out what's your date. Because when you basically file for the application for a WordCamp, they ask you for a date or at least a month and a year. So, for example, next year I chose April of 2021. So basically, once you basically get the going forward, you sort of want to pick the date. We've basically made a mistake one time of picking Father's Day weekend. And then because we basically tend to do it in May or June. Another time we picked it sort of in between holidays. So the biggest thing you just want to make sure you keep in mind of what's going on around it, especially if you're going into sort of the spring or fall. Then, like I said, Megan mentioned before, there's the venue. WordCamp in general, or WordPress in general, tends to like you to find a venue that can be donated, like a school, or basically someone who's interested in being a sponsor for the WordCamp by donating the space. But basically, in the past, we used Kent State Conference Center and Hotel. Basically, it was a great venue for us because they had 2 conference rooms. They also handled catering. That's something you have to keep in mind when you're working with a venue is on the catering, because you tend to see at a WordCamp, you usually get one lunch is provided, and then you start to see like the other lunch or other meal that day, if it's a 2-day event, is sort of on your own. But you also got to make sure everybody who has special dietary considerations has the ability to get what they need.
And physical ability to get there. That's what like I know Paul likes that about Kent, because you can just walk across the street and go to the restaurant across the street, and you don't have to worry about parking, and you don't have to worry about like walking out to your car that's like in a garage somewhere, any of that.
And then after that, basically the biggest thing about when it comes to venues, we mentioned video before, but the AV options. You want to try to find a venue that has what you need. Like I said, I've seen school, like I went to a WordCamp where it was in a school, worked really well because the school is a college who was used to streaming classes. So everything was sort of there for them. So that's something to keep in mind. And then basically before sort of everything starts going, you submit a budget to WordCamp Central. They approve it. The lead organizer tends to have a meeting with WordCamp Central. They go through it, and then you start to mention before the call for speakers, the call for sponsors, call for volunteers, and then you're sort of just working your way through. Select speakers and announce the speakers. A lot of that happens a few months out. The sooner you can actually select the speakers and announce the speakers, the better. Just sort of gives the speakers time to present. Also, in terms of for Speaker Wrangler, what we'd like to do is ask for the speaker to submit their slides ahead of time, so that way we can sort of review them. And also, at the end step, when we basically want to put a link to the video, we like to try to include the slides. And one of the biggest hurdles is getting the slides sometimes from a speaker, because they're working to the last minute, which is fine, but then you tend not to get them.
When you have a 2-day camp and you see someone that's on day 2 editing their slides while they're sitting in someone's session on day 1. I've seen it. Matt Trask.
I can't say anything. I've done the same thing, so I can't go too far. and stuff. But you're always
I have too
tweaking.
much anxiety for that.
Always tweaking. Because since we've been doing a live demo, which my ones have always been sort of a live demo, so you always know something's going to go wrong. So you always have
Yeah.
to come up with a backup option. Of course, one time I went as a speaker, the internet, my topic, you had something I had to use the connect the internet for, and the internet was really slow. So I literally had to hook up to my phone to be able to have enough bandwidth to be able to do my presentation. So if you're going to do a presentation, make sure you know that ahead of time. But then yeah, basically after that is just sort of opening tickets, getting trying people to buy tickets to register, and then ordering the swag items. Now basically we're going to try to do swag again next year's camp. Now it's interesting, like Rochester and some of these other camps, I think have done a better job than we did, where they sort of had sort of a storefront, sort of like I saw Rochester had a cups
Yeah. We
and
were
stuff.
told we were allowed to add stuff to the mercantile site or whatever it's called.
So
We
that's
were
also
able to
some.
do stuff, but yeah, well, that was a lot of work for Sarah too, with like all the design stuff. It would be cool if we can get like people interested in like multiple people interested in each of the areas, because if you had two people doing design, it wouldn't be such a burden, because I feel like she has so much work and it's all due at the same time, and like the rest of everyone else, like their work is kind of spread out over like the course of months, and I feel like hers is always feeling like crunch time, or like we need something changed, and like all of a sudden now she has to change like all these graphics. So it would be cool if anyone is interested in helping out with design.
And the other interesting thing I saw, I think, is WordCamp Europe this year, where they gave you the design for a T-shirt that you could download and you can order your own T-shirt. So you sort of got your own swag item that way. So that's basically part of it. It probably is probably the online camp. I might look for someone who's interested in basically probably part of the website.
Zoom
Idea is
backgrounds. That's what we got to give out. I saw some cool Zoom backgrounds recently. I think they came from events.
Yep, and then basically it's just like basically the screen says make sure everyone gets paid. That comes back down to the sponsors and the budget. Like Megan said, making sure all the contracts, all the things get paid ahead of time, because if you don't pay someone for something, you all of a sudden don't have an event. Again, like Megan said, we almost didn't have WordCamp Kent. So that's sort of everything. Cool. I'll let her know. Abby. So yeah, so that's sort of everything I had to sort of share. Basically now I just want to open it up for anybody who had any questions about organizing or WordCamps in general.
I imagine the budget for a virtual event is quite a bit different than for a live. What's the difference between the two?
A lot of it, actually, for a lot of it wasn't that much different except for the streaming. Basically, then the sponsor packages. Like when Megan basically mentioned before, we sort of had to rework how we did it, because the fact that they weren't getting, because most times sponsors get a table or a physical location, so we had to work with that. But a lot of it for us was because we were like the third or the fourth WordCamp to go online. We had one platform, and then it got changed again, and it got changed a third time. So all of a sudden we were trying to get the contract, everything signed between the captioning company and then the streaming service, everything done. I think it was like the week before the camp went live.
It was still expensive, I will tell you that. So one of the big problems was we were in May, which was like right around when some businesses would have felt some hurt and did some, spending freezes and hiring freezes and all that stuff like started to go around May. So, and actually a lot of people were just like, oh, we're not gonna spend any money on any sponsorships through the end of the year. Like a lot of them just made a hard cut. And some of it was like lack of understanding. So they cut all events that they were like sponsoring in the future, even though ours was online. Like they just had this blanket rule that they're just like, nope, we don't support you having events during COVID, and like didn't really look at it on like a case by case, as like we were not meeting in person. And since it was like from higher ups the company, it wasn't like I could talk them into it or anything. So we had a couple of people that we typically get. So like A2, we typically get $2,000 from them. So we didn't have them at all this year because they just blanket no events for the rest of the year. And that was like their stance. The other thing was I had already secured like $750 of sponsorship prior to, it's probably like mid-March or early April that I reached out to the $750 of these two sponsors, local sponsors. I reached out to them and offered to let them bump down a level or to let them back out entirely. So I think they even already paid their invoices, but I checked with Central and I was like, hey, is it okay if we refund them if they're in like financial ruin right now? I just want to give the option. And one of them did back out entirely and the other one did move down a level. So we ended up with only like 250 like local sponsorship money. And then we had our global, which was like, normally they give you, it's based on like, it's kind of arbitrary, the number they give you for the global, because it's based on like, almost like how much they trust that you're gonna raise your goal amount for your local. So if your goal amount for your local is like mine, I think was 4,200 the first year I did sponsorships, and I surpassed it by like 1,000 or something. So then the next year they set my goal a little higher and they cut back on the global because they were confident that I would like meet it, which didn't happen because I only raised $250
Yeah.
versus the like, 4,000 the year before or whatever it was. So yeah, they kind of like base it on if they think you're going to reach that amount, and if they're feeling like they have to go higher on that global amount that they give you, they'll nail you on some line items that they think can be cut or things you might do without. But ours was still, we were in the red this year, so it was still costly because the streaming service, we wanted to do pre-record and live, and that was the budget restriction that like blew it out of the water, because it was like $1,000 more or $1,500 more to do pre-recorded.
Oh,
and they
wow.
also do like a training session like in advance, and that's $1,000. So like the service that you use is particularly expensive, but I would imagine they're going to make a partnership with that group and have that just be covered by the global, and like kind of cut out the need to get locals to cover it, because I think it was obscene to like have to cover that and like,
Yeah.
in like a really bad financial time for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
They
How many
also did. I'm sorry. They did pad our globals a little bit, because that's the other thing I forgot is the fact the decision was made that we wouldn't charge for tickets for online events.
Right. Yeah. So that was
that's the other
the big
piece.
budget piece, is that you have literally no income.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That'll make a hit.
Yeah, I was just looking at Austin is coming up this weekend, and online attendees are free, and there was some kind of thing you could pay $25. I think it was basically, yeah,
like
out of the goodness of your heart.
Good idea. It's always a good idea to like have micro sponsorship as an option. So micro sponsorship, technically, you're supposed to just in the budget tool look at how much your per day cost is, and then if it's 2 day, you double it, and that's what you're supposed to charge. Like it's supposed to be the flat fee for like an individual person to attend. So it's supposed to be like, oh, I'm paying my way,
You mean the per head cost?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So because the $20 or $40 you pay for the weekend doesn't defray the full cost.
Right. Yeah.
Person.
Like that's almost always the value is like much higher. The cost is much higher.
Do the micro sponsors get recognition anywhere? Yeah,
like people do varying things for micro sponsors. In the past, like there was one time we did micro sponsors for like $200. They were pretty costly. It kind of depends on what you set your levels at, because you can have a level as low as like 200, but if you're at 200 or below, they won't send an invoice. They make you run it as a ticket. So it just makes sense to not, like you spend a lot of back and forth time getting someone like a page on the site and getting like their graphics and like their description, how they want it. And, they're going to ask you for a link, and like you go back and forth so much that logically, I feel like the cutoff is around 200. Like if your micro sponsorship is going to be any more than 200, you would do it as a sponsorship level, but 200 and under, you can just run it as like
what's the lowest sponsorship level?
Ours, the lowest we've gone is 250.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we do that as like the small business, and
Yeah.
they really just get like the mention on the site, and that's kind of it. We'll do a link and stuff from their page, but
Not that that really gets them anything, I'm sure.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it'll, like, it's cool bragging rights. I don't know if it brings them business or not necessarily.
Okay.
Obviously, being in front of the attendees is what would be the most valuable, but a lot of them are just, you know, they're probably just doing it for tax write-offs,
Yeah, yeah, sure,
you
yeah.
know, because
I can
it
see
does
what-
count, because it's a 501c, and I think you can count it. So
Yeah, if it is, yeah, if it's a federally
the foundation
approved.
is. So
Yeah, sure. So how many attendees did you have this year versus last?
We had 1,000. Like it was normally
yeah, I
only
think we had
get
2,000
average.
signed in at once.
Yeah,
We had
2,000
two
basically
tracks.
online,
Okay.
basically all at once. It was sort of different this year because we sort of had basically based on the number of people that are online. We just sort of saw that track. But yeah, normally like our events or local events in Kent, I think the most we had is what 300 to 400.
Not even-
No, the most we've had is like 140.
I swear we had two. I thought we had more than
No,
that.
no,
Was,
the venue wouldn't hold 400 anyways. The
Was
venue
it a one day?
like 250, I think.
No, our last year's camp was a 2-day.
Yeah.
We tend to do a 2-day camp. I'm thinking actually for next year's event to actually breaking it into just afternoon across 3 days, sort of like what Europe did. So that way basically people there
Yeah,
take
venue
camp
money
somewhat
though.
small.
If it's event,
Hmm?
well, you're talking for the online one.
Yes, it'll be online for regional next year.
Yeah, like
the online one.
venue would be tough for 3-day.
Because
Yeah,
you tend to see one day, like for our camp, for example, at least one day is our one-on-one day. Which you tend to see, you also see that some other camps, they tend to do that as a sort of standalone day, so like a contributor day. It's also, you tend to see this camp has as a 3-day event, which is those are basically when it comes to getting people that are interested in contributing to WordPress. It's very similar to like this meetup, where you basically go and they do a presentation of different teams that you can help out with. If you go to make.wordpress.org, different teams you can join a part of, and you can start to sign up. If you go to the national conference, you actually can start working with that team that day. It's really good, kind of a cool experience.
I want us to host a contributor day. Just putting it out there. Whoever wants to figure it out with me, let's do it.
So you're saying you're thinking about doing like 3 consecutive afternoons? Okay.
Like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. Because last year we did Saturday and Sunday. We started at what, 9? I think it was at 9
Yeah,
or
it
10.
was like 2 full days.
Yeah, it was 2 full days, and it was really hard, especially since it was online.
And we had
Yes.
the after party to go to also, so it was like all day of looking at your screen.
And stuff. That's why I thought basically breaking it up into like half days, probably would be better for everyone because you're not sitting there the entire time, and stuff. So yeah, that's what we're looking at for next year's event.
I liked the yoga session, though I didn't actually do the yoga session because I think I went and talked to the sponsors because I was like, I gotta be in there.
Like Zoom chair yoga, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is that what you did? Yeah,
That's
that's cool.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Actually, it really makes you feel a little more refreshed. Just since you guys were talking about April, I just was pulling up the calendar. I did notice Easter is April 4th, so that probably would. I would think that. I mean, some people, if they just want to do, I mean, they might be doing Easter from home, but I don't know if that would throw some people off from being able to attend something. So that Sunday, April 4th. I see that. That's the only thing that I see that is on the calendar that might really throw something from people being able to attend something. Because I'm like totally new to all this, so I don't know how much I can really contribute. But you guys are probably, because it's like Northeast Ohio now, and it's probably going to be Cleveland. Well, it's a virtual, so what am I thinking? Gosh. Apparently I haven't caught the boat from COVID. Like this whole year being virtual. Wow. I'm in the wrong meetup.
No, you're right. Actually, if we actually were doing an actual venue, like in person, we probably would be looking at Cleveland as the venue, because that basically makes sense for the region.
Yeah, get CSU to donate their space or something.
Yeah.
BW.
I think it's interesting that you guys used to be in Stow, because that's kind of the area I'm in. So I was like, whoa, kind of small world.
I lived in Cuyahoga Falls for a few years, maybe like 2 years also. So yeah, I think I went to the meetup out there when I was living. Yeah. And Kent obviously is where we host the WordCamp, but yeah, it was just kind of like a pre-existing thing and it got inherited. So we're like driving out to Kent from like Cleveland area to host an event in some other city that we don't live in.
Yeah. Well, I'm going back on mute.
Yeah, and the other thing is like with the organizing team, we have lots of meetings leading up. Like it was a little beneficial that like a lot of us on the organizing team happen to be working at the same place, but that's not really how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to make sure you're not like monopolizing the ideas, I guess, or like, you know, shaping the ideas in a particular way. So they try to like tell you to make sure you have a diverse group, and like try to not have people from the same company so that it doesn't seem like they're like sponsoring the event or something, and doesn't like make it feel like an unjoinable club basically, or like there's gatekeepers that, you know, you don't have an in with. So although we know each other and we're like a close-knit group, we're not exclusionary in any way, and we're hosting stuff like this because we want to make sure we get like fresh blood, because like, you know, we've been doing it for forever, and it's all about like spreading it around and making sure other people are building their own community.
Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing about WordCamps in general, is the community, is basically to promote and also just to help people get involved. I mean, I think the biggest thing when I went to my first WordCamp, it was shortly after I started with WordPress. Went to a one-on-one day, it was WordCamp Columbus, and I walked away because I met Steve Grunwell and some others there. It actually encouraged me. That's why I really sort of fell in love with WordPress, is because of the community, because everybody sort of there to support one another.
Steve was also my gateway drug. Yeah, between like Steve and Rich, they're the ones that like convinced me to get involved.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Not at the moment, no.
All right.
I don't have a question, but I would like to say that the WordCamp Kent this past year is my first experience with a WordCamp, and I thought it was wonderful. So I thank you for doing it, and I don't know if you're covered with design help now, but I would definitely be willing to pitch in. I thought it was a great experience, so you know, I'd like to give back, and that's one way maybe I could. You know, like I said, I'm kind of new to WordPress, so I don't want to get in over my head, but I could do that.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, what I'll probably do is I'll put the email address in the chat. So if you say everyone who's interested, just send the email there, just letting us know, and then once we start getting rolling, I'll reach out. Like Megan said, we'll sort of set up our first meeting, and then we can sort of basically work from there. So try to.
And they do an orientation too, and we kind of schedule that around the organizers' like availability. It's essentially like this, but it's people that are way more experienced than even us. People that are like, it's the organizers of the WordCamps.
Try to find it. Trying to make sure I grab the right email address since we just switched Google accounts.
We made too many.
There we go. Northeast Ohio WP@gmail.com.
Ooh,
Also,
did you set up our G Suite yet?
I think so. I'm able to get to the Gmail, and we have YouTube working. Beyond that, I'm not sure. But yeah, basically, if you're interested, feel free to send us an email. Also, or put a comment in for on this particular meetup. And then, like I said, we'll reach out once we get the ball rolling. We'll also probably do a call for organizers as we're leading up. So like Megan said, we're trying to get basically get more people involved. Because the bigger the organizer team, the thing is it's better for everyone, because that basically everybody sort of doesn't have to carry the load of doing multiple jobs. also I think it's more fun experience when you're doing it with a larger group of people. So the last couple of things I have for this meetup is the upcoming meetups. In terms of November, which will be here for in blink, we're going to be doing a Gutenberg sort of workshop. Basically, this is going over sort of basically what Gutenberg is, sort of quick tips, basically sort of how to create your first couple blocks. I'm using probably advanced custom fields and a couple other different techniques. And being this thing is just sort of opening it up for questions. So I know basically a lot of people are still just sort of getting used to Gutenberg. And then for December, we're going to do basically another game night as my plan for sort of a holiday party / game night in December. January, I'm probably going to skip that particular meeting unless, Dave, you want to host your first meetup. Because I don't think I really have anything planned for January. And then Tuesday, not Tuesday, February, will be our show and tell and sort of catch up meetup. It's basically sort of everybody is following New Year's. Everybody sort of give everybody sort of back in the groove, and then we'll start. And then after that, we'll obviously announce the next couple ones. A lot of it's going to be sort of lead up to WordCamp. It's because WordCamp is going to be in April. We won't have a meetup in April because we don't tend to have one in the same month, just because it's a lot of organization sort of for those. So that's everything I have. Anybody have any questions? Anything else they want to share? All right. Well, I guess we'll call it a night. I want to thank everybody for attending. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at Northeast Ohio WP or put a comment on the meetup. And we're always here. It doesn't even have to be about organizing. If you just need help with WordPress or anything else, we're always here. We also we mentioned earlier we do have a Slack channel. Megan, is it Northeast Ohio at Slack or is it Kent? The Slack channel.
I think it's NEO WordPress. Oh, WP NEO. That's annoying. The URL is wpneo.slack.com, but the name is NEO WordPress.
It's not awkward at all.
Yeah, it's not like we didn't think any of it through. I don't even think it matches the meetup slug. I think the meetup slug is NEO WordPress.
Do we need in Slack invite or anything to join that one?
Yeah, let me grab I think I have to get a URL for it because Slack's a little weird with invites.
And then and we have a lot of different channels on our Slack channel, including Dan, there is a jobs channel on there. So basically for people posting up job openings they have, or they post as they're looking for one. Nice. In terms of the WordPress sides, also there's one for help desk, which is what we used for last year's WordCamp. For basically, again, if anybody just needs help WordPress related topics, you put it in there. And that's also when we do organizing for the camp. Most will be through Slack. Because we create different channels for different topics. All right.
Cool.
Well,
all right. Cool.
Oh, and people should check out. There's new content at learn.wordpress.org. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but they started releasing workshop content as part of the WordPress.org project. So there's workshops there, and they're also looking for people to host workshops. So if you're interested in teaching, or if you want to, they might have like lesson plans or something that you can follow, but yeah.
I do. Yeah.
It's also available.
And then as a reminder, there is another mega meetup for the South Florida meetup that's next Tuesday. For anybody who's interested, it's about plugins. There's a link in the chat, which I think I'll disappear once I end it. So I might just put that on our meetup page. But then that's about it. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your night, and we'll see you next month.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good
Bye.
month.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.